So I am Robert White, and I am the founder of Any Length Retreat, and I'm really grateful. This is our second national webinar. So we got the first one out of the way, got the jitters out of the way. I always still get nervous. And I really don't want to make this a whole lot about me, but I just kind of want to talk about the agenda tonight I have two amazing men, both alumni of Any Length. Evan Morrison, he's our business development and admissions coordinator, and Bobby Williams, he's an Any Length alumni, and he is awesome. He's recovered for life. And so, once again, not only am I the founder of Any Length Retreat, but I also have recovered from addiction. I suffered from addiction for a long time, but it really started rearing its ugly head from 17 to 24. I went in and out of different treatment centers and detox centers, institutions, jail, even prison. And whenever I got 3 years sober, I wanted to create an environment where men could recover for life, reestablish trust with their families and friends, and reconnect to their true purpose, whatever that might be. And so in 2016, we created Any Length Retreat, and we've been able to do that. And it's not just us. The guys that come to us, they have to put in work and find that responsibility in their lives. So, without further ado, I'll let Evan introduce himself and our guest speaker.
Thank you, Robert. So like Robert said, my name is Evan Morrison. I do admissions and business development here at Any Length Retreat. We have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Bobby Williams. Bobby, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Bobby, if you wouldn't mind maybe starting us off with just a brief introduction, who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Bobby Williams, like they said. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. Came down to Austin about 6 years ago. Actually, moved straight from a treatment center into I guess it was 5 years ago, into an Any Length's house. So I've been around the family for quite a long time. Love these guys, love what they're doing. Robert's running a great. It's a great thing that Robert's running, and I love to be a part of it. I love to stay connected. I enjoy everybody out there. It's really amazing to see what guys come in there as, and then what they leave as, and then what even further down the road what that blossom looks like. So, yeah.
It's awesome, man. We appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons why we asked you to be here tonight. Is you're one of those people we see continuing to come out, work with guys, and stay a part of the community. And that's super important. We're grateful for that. So if you could start us off, just like a general kind of history of what your experience was like in active addiction, kind of before coming through the retreat, just kind of what life looked like for you.
Yeah. So I'll start off the bat saying, I'm a heroin addict. I was a heroin addict for about a decade, and off and on. But I guess I started out when I was in high school. Started smoking pot real early, hanging out with the skateboarding kids, and the scene that was going on at that time, and I guess it was the mid 2000s. I don't know. I didn't really fit in, so I needed to fit in somewhere, and these kids kind of looked cool. And I had smoked weed, I guess, a little before then, and I remember that I really loved it. I loved what it did for me. I loved how it made me feel, and I loved the problems that it solved, which was like taking the focus of my consciousness, instead of having it being projected back on myself, and how I show up, how I look, if people like me, am I weird, am I a loser or something like that, and it instantly kind of just dissipated into the smoke, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I really kind of based my my whole identity on smoking pot, and then eventually like using drugs. I kind of it was like a glorious kind of status for me to be the druggie. And at that time, I really didn't notice that I mean, I noticed a little that I was using and drinking more, smoking more, and my focus was solely on uh, getting high and getting drugs. But was it was it really apparent that I was an addict at that time? I'm not really sure. But I definitely did notice differences. You know, we would all be sitting out in one of my really good friends' sheds after school because for some reason their parents like sold pot, and like um, we were just able to do whatever we wanted to do out there. Um, and like I would notice, like my eyes were always on the bowl or the drink or the amount of alcohol we still had left or the amount of money I still had in my pocket to burn. I was definitely focused, and I realized that, not realized, but I kind of noticed that other people weren't doing that. Other people were able to have fun doing the stuff that everybody, like we were doing, using drugs, and for some reason it felt more of like a job to keep high and as high and drunk as I could be. So I tried my stint at college, but obviously when you're carrying that kind of responsibility to stay high with you through college, you don't last very long. Um, and up until then, I not necessarily been a self-sufficient drug addict, but like I was able to get money um, in other ways or save my money that my mom gave me as an allowance in college, and um, not really do too much like shady stuff when it came to getting money. But when I moved back from college after kind of a semester and or 3 semesters, um, I got back home and there was nothing to do. There was nothing to do but drink and smoke pot. And then at this time, I kind of started taking a lot of benzodiazepines, um, and I didn't want a job. I already had a job. I was gonna stay high as much as I could. I was gonna get as high as I could, um, and I think things went really. They started going as if they weren't going downhill already, but it kind of took a cliff jump. Um, so uh, I don't think I really had a stable job for the next 6 years. Um, I was mooching off my mom however I could. I would lie from her, steal from her, steal her credit card, take money out, put it back. And like, obviously, my drug habit is getting a lot more severe at this time. Um, Enough to where she kicks me out of the house and I have to go move with my dad, where I just do the same things over again. Um, I had taken pain pills before, but I didn't really like any kind of opiate at the time. They made me itchy. I couldn't sleep, and I'm a severe insomniac. And like I, when I can't sleep, it affects me. I'm so afraid. I've tried to kill myself a couple of times because I've been in delusions because I haven't slept. And like, no, this wasn't on meth or coke or anything like that. Although that comes later. But so it got to the point where the only way that I could sleep was by getting as completely messed up as I possibly could. And my fear of my insomnia became this ever-present theme in my life. Um, and one night, my best friend, who had just gotten back from rehab, which is always the people you want to hang out with, right off the bat, and we were drinking everything. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we drove out to Stop Six in Fort Worth, picked up my first bag of heroin, and I had done a little cocaine that night, and I was so afraid of me not being able to go to sleep, which was an absurd thought because I had drank probably a fifth of something, I don't know. Um, but yeah, I laid back, I gave my arm up, and my friend shot me up for the first time. And I remember feeling everything just kind of dissipated into relaxation. I was going to go to sleep that night, and as long as I had something to do with it, I was going to be going to sleep every night and from here until I die, because it was that much of a solution for me. Um, it it was what I thought at the time, the thing that I needed in my life, that the doctors weren't going to give me, God wasn't going to give me, love wasn't going to give me. It was the thing that was missing, from my soul, my psyche, my spirit, my everything. It filled something that always felt I needed filling, but I couldn't quite pour enough in or take enough pills or do enough coke or anything. Um, and so I ran with it. And I ran with it hard for the next, I guess, 3 or 4 years. I jumping from couch to couch. I really didn't get into any breaking and entering or anything like that, but I did put my mom through the ringer with every bit of guilt that I could lay on her, manipulation. Uh, God, I can't even imagine what the things that like, even trying now at almost 3 years sober. Um, I still can't quite comprehend the amount of damage that I did to my mom, um, because I managed to stay high for 3 or 4 years without a job, and I really didn't steal from anybody but my mom. So you can imagine how much I must have taken from her. And we are not a wealthy family by any means. Um, and so I landed in my first treatment center when I didn't really want to get sober, but I ran out of money and my mom had completely cut me off, because the greatest thing that she ever did in my entire life was she finally got the courage to say no and completely cut me off through any sort of communication. Um, and like, at the time, I hated her for it, because I knew it would put me into a position where I was going to have to change. Up until then, I could always pull on her heartstrings to make sure that that didn't happen, that she could not say no. And thank God for Al-Anon and the church group she um, became a part of, because she started talking to somebody I didn't want her to talk to. And so, yeah, I landed in my first treatment center, out in Lubbock. Went through there. It wasn't, I don't know if I just wasn't ready to hear the message, to be honest. I didn't really listen. I didn't understand what step one was. I didn't know what I was getting myself into and the gravity of what actually was wrong with me. Because after I went through this treatment center, I still didn't know quite what was wrong with me. I'm sure they told me, but I wasn't really willing to listen. Stayed out there for, I think I got a month out of the treatment center before I started getting my mom's love back, not love, but my mom's trust back enough to where I could sway her into letting me come back to Fort Worth. And I remember on the phone call, I was smoking spice saying, I'm sober, just let me come back. I hate it out here. I'm alone, I miss you. See, that's the kind of things I would tell my mom to kind of try and bend her to whatever I needed. And luckily she was still in Al-Anon and everything. So she said I could come back on some terms, and like within a week I broke those terms and I was out on my butt again, alone. And I mean, I kind of repeated this cycle over and over and over again. Went to, I think I ended up at, Any Length was the 14th treatment center that I went to. And I don't know. I wasn't willing to listen to the message. I wasn't willing to believe that there was something inherently wrong with me. I thought I could think my way around it, just like I had up until I was, I had thought myself out of everything. I had relied on my intellect, um, which pridefully I have, but I really not that smart. If you know me, you know that. I put on a really good show though. But anyways, it's gotten me through a lot of things, and so I was determined to just do enough. I was determined to stop at the right time. I was determined to prove people wrong. I was determined to be as comfortable as I possibly could. Um, and that was the cycle I went through over and over and over again until I finally came down to Austin and moved into an any lengths house. Still didn't have it quite down, and relapsed, and then went 2 weeks away from the any lengths house, and then came back. And really, I think it was the first time I started to kind of have an inclination that I might be might be something wrong with me, because I had a million times before told myself that I was never going to do it again, and yet I kept doing it again. And a man that used to work at Any Lengths, Hank, he sat me down when I came back and gave me a really good. We had a really good conversation, and I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And From that conversation, I lit on fire. I took the knowledge that I had and started actually applying it, because I could recite the big book back and forth by this time after 13 treatment centers. You get to know the page numbers really well, so it makes you look good in meetings, and like you can drop some really cool stuff on people in meetings and impress the girls and impress the guys. They want to be you. That's what I thought, obviously. And after a while, after being on fire, that fire was kind of dimmed by my own pride and ego about knowing, about self-knowledge. I knew everything. You couldn't tell me anything, and I wasn't really willing to listen to anybody but myself. And my intellect came back into play, to where like I had lost sight of the spiritual aspect of this program. I was really good at the mechanics, but for some reason, the stuff written in between the lines, that's on the 12 steps in the room, I couldn't grasp it. I lost sight of it, and I was so oblivious to that fact that I walked through life without knowing anything was wrong, completely unaware that I was broken inside and breaking down at a really quick rate. And I made a wrong decision, and well, a million wrong decisions, but I ended up relapsing and moving out. And I didn't come back in for another, I don't know, 2.5 years. And when I had finally said enough, I wasn't quite at the point that I'd been to before. It wasn't my lowest bottom. I still had money. I still had a girlfriend. I still had a house. Still had kind of a friends, but they lived with me, so I guess it doesn't really count. They were more roommates, but I still felt like I had something going. I had tread left on the tires. A lot of me going in and out was just, how much tread do I have left before I have to call it quits and go back to rehab? But this time was different. It was solely based on the internal status of where I was at, rather the external, because every time before, the external was the things that turned me towards wanting help. And this time I was broken. I was lonely. I felt truly hopeless, truly hopeless. And luckily, Robert's such a dear friend. He kind of kept in contact with me, and I knew that I had a hand that I could reach out to, because Robert was there. He had let me know, and he had shown me with his actions. And I'm really trying not to cry, but I just do want to say thank you, Robert. It did save my life. But yeah, and so I reached out to Anylinks, and that was the last time I ever used any bit of drugs. I did as much dope as I could in the morning, smoked as much pot as I could in the afternoon, and my friend drove me to Anylinks, and and that was it. So yeah, that's kind of what it was before.
That's awesome, Bobby. Really appreciate you sharing that with us. Got me a little choked up too. Um, I'll save this story for later, but I think a lot of people can relate to what you said. I mean, being through that many treatments and still not getting it, that's a really hard thing to watch, like as a family member, as a loved one. And it's something that, just on the phone with people throughout the day, I hear all the time. And it's like, it's hard to come up, with an answer for that, because it's going to be different for everybody. You touched on it a little bit there in that last bit, but what do you think it was that made the difference this last time? I mean, you've been sober now for over 3 years.
Just under.
Just under. Cool.
Just under.
So what was
Don't jinx
it? Oh man. So, if you could maybe think of like some highlights or things that you particularly enjoyed about your experience at the retreat, and maybe what it was about that experience that stuck,
Yeah, I do remember my first night, and I think you were about to bring that story up.
Yeah, you can tell it. I can tell it, but that stuck with me, man.
You can tell it. You probably remember it a lot better. But
yeah, I went out there for the H&I. I was at the time managing one of the sober living houses, and I mean, you were looking pretty rough. Like you said, you had just got in there, and we were sitting outside, and you were like telling me your story, how you had been a house manager. And you were like, and one day you're gonna wake up and all this stuff, and you were like, I'm you. I was like, holy shit, dude! It was crazy, man. It was a dark moment. But it's just like, it's been so beautiful to see you come out on the other side, man. I'm so happy for you, dude.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, like I really knew and believed in what Robert was doing, and like I had my pick of 14 or 13 treatment centers that I went to before, and I there was something calling me to Anylinks. Some of my friends had been out there, and a lot of people that I because my family was Anylinks. Anylinks was pretty much the only people I knew in Austin, and I knew everyone was loving and caring and had the best intentions for me. So yeah, I got there, and Anylinks gave me kind of a sense of responsibility for my own recovery. I think before I would just sit around and wait for things to happen to me. And the program out there really kind of taught me that I have to seek this spiritual thing myself. Like, yeah, there's going to be people along the ride with me and helping me in any way they can. But I have to move my feet too. And up until that point, I just moved my mouth. And so they really taught me what it was like to show up as a man in recovery, not just show up as an image of a man in recovery, but they really got down to the nitty gritty and showed me what it was to actually be a man of God. They had a whole bunch of assignments that I had to do that I really hadn't experienced in other places, where we weren't really just like memorizing the book, but we were really kind of breaking down what it actually means page by page. We did step studies, in which I had done at previous places, but it just reinforced everything that I was learning. And to be honest, I think there was a switch that flipped, that I don't know if it was just the time for me. Like I like I said, I'd gotten to this point where I was just so alone and stuff, and like it was just a combination of love, spirit, any lengths, God, the friends around me, the people I was going with, and like something just switched to where my willingness to become a I don't know, my willingness showed up in ways it hadn't before. Um, instead of just the stuff that everybody else could see, I was all of a sudden praying in my free time just because I wanted to grow closer and experience this thing when any time else, like if someone wasn't holding me accountable to do it, or it wasn't visibly obvious that I was doing it and like to somebody else, I wasn't going to do it. Um, and the people around me, the guys that were running any length, like I don't know, I just saw them, I believed them, and for some reason, like it was at other treatment centers, it was probably the same group of people, same people, like doing really good things, and I just wasn't at the point yet of where I was ready to open my ears and open my heart to the message. But luckily, I was. And luckily, I was at a place that gave me the message. Um, and so I mean, it was difficult. There was like soul seeking and like some really uncomfortable stuff that I had to go through, um, with people, and then all by myself, just like me and God, and like um, it was an experience that I'd never experienced before. I think I actually started to believe in God for the first time in my entire life. All before that, I'd been pretending to believe in God because everybody else was, and I wasn't in the group if I didn't. Um, but they welcomed all my idiotic ideas about God, and was willing to listen to me, and then kind of let me find my own way to find this power greater than myself. They didn't force it upon me, but they allowed me to kind of stumble my way through and hit my head on a couple of walls, and like um, I really kind of get miserable. I've always had this thing with trying to figure out God because I was been a devout atheist for my entire life, and I remember my mentor John. He just let me go down the hole until I said, "There is no point being in this hole," and I finally came to that conclusion. What am I doing? And it was at that moment I had a really terrible phone call with my ex-girlfriend that I expected a whole bunch of stuff, and this guy who was out there, he kind of saw me and said, "Are you ready?" And by me just answering yes, it was the first time I ever took a third step in my entire life. And he knew exactly what the words yes meant, and I did too. And it meant that I'm ready. I can't do this. I'm running down roads that really don't have an end. Um, and so yeah, it was a transformative time in my life, in my recovery, and not to say I couldn't do it without any length. I'm sure, there's definitely possible like I could have, but like, it being at any length, it was just every single possible like perfect thing happened, and like I found God and lasting sobriety.
Bobby, I want to thank you for being so open with us tonight. Um, I appreciate the answers you're giving, man. And yeah. So let's get to the good stuff. So talk to us a little bit about, what your life is like now. That can be, professionally, relationships, family. Just like give us a little snapshot of what life is like for Bobby Williams 3 years sober.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm running y'all through like a Cribs version.
Oh, this is awesome.
No, I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, I actually have my own house. So
dude. Hell yeah.
From someone that had a couch and it was only rented. But so quickly out of any links, like I had some sort of professional career before, and like I was immediately determined to get back to that status, however low it was. But I was determined, and and thank God something got in the way, and like I really quickly out of the retreat, I did not get things going my way. What I thought was going my way. Well, I didn't get what I wanted, and it really taught me a lesson about patience and like keeping at it and determination and like relying on God. And you know, I took a job that I really didn't want to take, and like kind of just started from there of starting out slow and slowly building it. And to now I have like a career where and this is just, you know, almost 3 years later, I'm in line to take over the company that I now work at. And the most important thing is my mother. Like I said at the beginning, I remember getting out, and then me and Matt Lohman, someone that works at Any Length, who was running the house, and the guy that did this last week, Anthony, we would always have impromptu meditations at night. And I am a mama's boy, and I remember for about 4 or 5 months, I would meditate, and then by the end of it, I would be crying for gratitude because my mom still believed in me, still was like, had hope with me. And like slowly but surely, because she had been burnt so many times, because like the one story I told you about kind of like getting her hopes back and trust back and broke, like every time I went to treatment that happened. And you know, I haven't had a key to the house in, you know, 10 years. I don't have it with me, but I have the key to the house downstairs. I talk to her at least 3 times a week. We just call and talk, and I don't want this to be all about me and my relationship with my mom, but it's very important that I got that back, because I had ruined it and stomped on it and urinated on it and sold it to anybody who would take it for anything, you know. And I got it back, and it took a long time. You know, it started out with every time I would call her, she'd say, "No, I don't have money, and you better have your ass in sober living still." And yes, Mom. And then that slowly became, "How are you doing? How are you still sober?" and then it became, "What are you doing for Christmas?" I hadn't been to Christmas in a long time. And I saw my entire family at Christmas. And then fast forward 2.5 years, I'm at every single family function I can be. I go to cousins' weddings, and I have chats with my parents just to have, and the external things are good. Yeah, I have a car, and I have a good job, and I have money, and like I sound like a rapper, but no. You could take all that away. The relationships I have with the people that are still involved with Any Length, that I went through. My best friend went to Any Lengths, and we went in the same time. I think we have 2.5 weeks of sobriety difference, and like he works right next to me. I'm with him all the time. We can hold each other accountable. I can get vulnerable with 50 people on my contacts list. I could call anybody and they would be there. That means so much to me, coming from someone who didn't trust me, would only be involved with me if they absolutely had to. I was alone, and now I feel fulfilled. Like if you would have asked me the day I got out of the any length retreat and into the sober house, make your life whatever you want it. What do you think it'll be like in 2.5, 3 years? I would have sold myself short, um, because I can't thank everybody enough that's been involved with my recovery. Robert, any length, Evan. Um, God, it's been a blessing, a gift, and I just hope other people can get it. And my hands out, just like Robert's was to me, trying to give back the same things that were really just handed to me. I feel like, um, so yeah, that's what it's like now.
And Bobby, it does not get old, hearing people talk about that kind of thing. I'm so happy for you, man. Like, you deserve all of this and you've worked so hard for it. And it's funny, like everybody has this like extra, like you have a house that you bought, you have a car, but like the things that really matter are those relationships you've formed and gotten back in your life. And it's just it doesn't get old. Like I said, it doesn't. So something you guys will see Robert mentioned in the chat that you guys can post questions to the Q&A. If you have any questions you would like to ask Bobby, Robert, or myself. One final topic I wanted to touch on before we get to those, Bobby, like I said earlier in the webinar, something I see you doing a lot, and that I see people like yourself in long-term recovery doing is continuing to work with other people and new addicts and alcoholics. What has that done for you in your program?
Well, for one, it's kept me connected. I quickly forget who I am if I'm not seeing people that are just like me. And yeah, that's new people, and like we have an H&I on Fridays that we come to. God willing, it comes back soon. But it keeps me connected. It, like you said, when you're thinking about recovery for yourself, you don't really get the heebie-jeebies that quickly, but when you are sitting knee to knee with another guy who you recognize as having a spiritual experience because the light's coming on and he's understanding things and he's sacrificing and like being inconvenienced and like powering through it with willingness and God, and then like his life is changing. Like to see other people recover is a special thing. And luckily we're in a city that there's recovery all around us, and there's so many opportunities to get out there and really put the hand out. And it's like I said, there's nothing else like it, seeing somebody else. But like what it does for me is it keeps me focused and like connected with other people and connected with the Any Length, the community, because like some of the best days I've had in sobriety were sitting out at the retreat, either playing volleyball or just chatting it up with the guys. You'd be surprised what kind of conversations go out with a bunch of 15 freshly sober people and then somebody that's 2-3 years sober. It can get extremely funny, but then there's like this sense of camaraderie that we're kind of all in this together. And it reminds someone who is so used to feeling alone, so used to feeling kind of just an outsider, that there's others out there, and the people that did it for me, who helped me realize that I am not alone. Like I can only do, like I have to do everything I can to make sure that that opportunity, I'm there for that opportunity for somebody else to feel exactly what I did. So it's everything.
Completely agree with you. I don't know if that can be overstated. I don't know if we can really say that enough, like how important that is, especially, if you want to do this long term. We've got a couple questions in the chat. We'll open this up to both Bobby and Robert. This one's, and you touched on this a little bit, Bobby. I really appreciate how much you talked about, your relationship with your mom and kind of what she went through. It sounds like she got some support and help through Al-Anon. So the question is kind of like, what if my son isn't willing to get help? How do you set those boundaries? So for people tuning in that maybe don't know what Al-Anon is, do you think you could share a little bit about, one, what that organization is, and then two, maybe what your mother's experience has been like getting support through that?
So Al-Anon is kind of like a group of Alcoholics Anonymous, but except for, well, let me defer to Robert. Robert knows a lot more about it. I'd stayed away from those places.
You were on the right track.
I was.
So it's for the families. That's it. It's like a fellowship for the families, and they go through the same 12 steps because everybody's powerless over alcohol. Because that's the thing that my mom couldn't stop me from drinking or alcohol and drugs. But it's the same format. You get a sponsor, and they mentor you because they've gone through experiences that you haven't, or maybe you've have similar experiences, but you haven't overcome it. And you get to have that relationship with yourself, right? And so it's like, it's the same way of thinking, right? Just like the addict and alcoholic or myself, forgets every single time, right? Because I'm powerless. That a week ago, like I was in a fight with my mom, or like I got in a car wreck, or whatever my alcoholism led to me then. It's like the same thing with the Al-Anon or with the family. Like they forget, like, okay, we just helped him out a week ago. We're gonna help him out. And so like I need that fellowship of other people's experience. And there's a lot of great books. I talk often about love first. And it's that, it's starting to be a part of the solution as the family, instead of being a part of the problem. And that's not to say, like the experience that my family had, like enabling me or whatever, it wasn't right or wrong. It's the experience that they needed to have to come to the conclusion that they couldn't save me. I had to have that responsibility, like much what was Bobby was talking about, that like I have to move my own feet. Like they can help me, they can support me, they can love me, but I have to take those actions for myself, because at the end of the day, like that's it. Like I can't. People can't always do stuff for me.
So
I also want to say, Bobby, man, really grateful for you and sort of the relationship we have. That really touched me earlier, man. So,
dude, it's out. I have so much gratitude for any lengths in you, but I started tearing up. It's hard not to tear up. Like I always tear up when people are watching me, because it's the most embarrassing thing I could do. But I do want to say something in kind of regards to the question. When I was having a heart-to-heart with my mom, I guess it was over this last Christmas, and we were just kind of talking. We don't really get too gloom and doom when we're talking. We don't really talk about the bad times, is what she labels it. But for some reason, we had kind of dipped under the surface, and I asked her what the hardest thing was, and she said, telling you no and knowing that you could probably die because of it. Like whether I was asking for something, I don't know. And then like on the other side of it, like Robert was saying, like it is my responsibility, and it's not the responsibility of my mom to keep me alive and keep me, and when she said no for the first time, it gave me the ability to kind of experience the consequences of my actions for the first time. And because of my mom going to Al-Anon and kind of getting better and into recovery herself, it allowed me to quickly see what I needed to do, because she would shield me from everything. I pulled her in front of everything to shield me, is better. But yeah, so like when she stepped away and she would not allow herself to take the hit for me, whether it was financially, emotionally, whatever it was, legally, like I think I got to the place I was right before any lengths is because my mom was not talking to me. I didn't have any sort of I didn't have any ability to like use her in any way. And so like that attributed to the switch being flipped of me becoming willing and really able to take a look at myself for the first time, because I experienced the consequences that I'd never had. So I just wanted to say that. And like, I know that if there are any mothers or parents listening and kind of looking, like, I know for a long time my mom said, like, I can't say no, because what if I say no and then he goes out and does something stupid? And it's like you can't take that responsibility. Like I said, it was like it could have ended up with me, not here anymore. But I don't know. God, I can't. That's why I cried every time I was in meditation, because I just cannot imagine the pain that someone has to go through for that. But yeah, Al-Anon helped. She started getting sleep again. She started living her own life. She was happy. She kind of let me go. And it was through Al-Anon and groups like that she was able to kind of live her own life, even though I wasn't willing to get sober. And she had to have the separation, and it wouldn't have come without something like that in God.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Bobby.
Yeah.
Really insightful stuff, man. I can definitely say I got a lot out of that. We want to thank you again for being here.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we have any other questions. Cool, man. Robert, you got anything else?
That's it. I just want to thank everyone for attending this webinar. Always love hanging out with you two guys. And if you need any more, any more information, you can visit our website at anylength.com. And feel free to reach out. Feel free to watch out. We're going to do a webinar. It's typically, it's not, you can reach at anylength.com too. Robert Hoffman.
.net.
He said .net twice. But I'm just extremely grateful. And I want to add something else like that. Like my relationship with my mom, my dad, my grandparents, like my dad's mom, like my sobriety date and my dad's mom, her birthday, my nanny, she's passed away now, but it was her birthday. And like every year, and I got to have a cool relationship before she passed away. But it's like that's the gold. And not only like with my family, but my other family, it's like everything else is like icing on the cake. Like, and like I have a purpose that I get to be a part of today that like lights me up. Like I wake up, unless like wake up in a irritated mood or something like that. But even then, like I get today, because I got to face like myself, I get to face that uncomfortability, go into prayer and meditation, pause, and then, go and do what I love doing, which is, helping men and their families, just like other men did that for me. But it's an awesome life. And Matt Loman always says this, and it always sticks with me. But like the stuff that we get to do at any length retreat or in recovery in general, is like, millions of people won't have the opportunity to be a part of, because, one, because maybe they don't suffer from addiction or whatever, or two, like they just won't face that truth within themselves to get free and have that relationship with themselves. So just really grateful to be a part of this. But Robert White for Heisman, if only, I was a place kicker and punter. I don't think they can get the Heisman.
I'll be the first.
Be the first, right? But feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're here and available. And I think we're gonna, do these webinars for a while. See what happens and just talk about recovery. So if you have any suggestions too, because this is our second one, if you want to email us like any topics that would be helpful, anything we could do to make it better or more engaging, let us know. And, we love you all. Thank you.